welcome to another episode of Leadership Exchange. I'm Husna Syeda, an executive leadership coach, a transformation architect. So today we're talking about holding authority without certainty. For me, the best way to enter this conversation is using a metaphor. Holding authority without certainty is like holding the center when the ground beneath you is moving. You may not have all the answers as yet, but you may not be able to control everything unfolding in front of you or around you. But people are still watching how you communicate, how you listen, and how you choose the next responsible steps as a leader. That's the kind of leadership we are talking about today. Not the easier version where the answer is clear and the leader simply has to communicate. The harder version is when clarity is still forming, pressure is still rising, and the people are still looking forward for you as steadiness moves in. I want to begin with a moment from my own life that taught me lessons very deeply. Almost 16 years back, on the day of Eid, my life changed with just one phone call. It was a day which started with prayers, with celebration, and the biggest thing that my older son Akhil, it was his first day of high school. And one good news was he got selected for his football team, high school football team. And I had met the coach in the morning, very impressive, very thoughtful, very going in the direction what we expected out of him. When I came back home, I just received a phone call from my husband's doctor's office. And what I heard was really shocking. He said that my husband was diagnosed with cancer. Everything was fair enough, everything was going smooth with him. And he also informed me that within 24 hours, he need to start his chemo treatment. And while I was trying to yet comprehend and what it should be for my family, and gathering or mustering all the courage to prepare for a new normal, another crisis came through. That was from my business standpoint. The technical training center where my 35 campus recruits were being prepared for a client project had got fired. The training was incomplete. The money was already paid. The client was upset and was waiting. The timeline was closing in. And my personal life did not pause because my professional responsibilities still needed me. And that whole time, personal crisis was I have to leave behind, focus on something which was very important and deeply connecting to me. Looking back, that season became one of my earliest lessons in life that is about shared leadership. I could not carry everything on my shoulder. I had to trust my colleagues, allowing each one to take some responsibility and step forward and make decisions when certainty was definitely not available. And that's where today's conversation is going to roll over. What does it mean to hold authority when life is unclear, the pressure is real, and people are still looking forward for your steadiness as a leader? I'm honored to open this conversation with the three thoughtful leaders, Michal Lassman, Afsheen Azam, and Gabby Ring. Michelle Lassman is a product marketing and a go-to market leader, an executive coach, and a trust leadership advocate. She works with professionals and leaders to strengthen clarity, communication, resilience, and impact, bringing a grounded lens to leadership presence and decision making. Welcome, Michelle.
Hi, Husna. Happy to be here. Hi, Afsheen. Hi, Gabby.
Thank you. Afsheen Azam is an executive coach with experience in leadership advisory, organizational development, and coaching leaders through growth and change. She brings a thoughtful, human centered lens to leadership, trust, and transformation. Welcome, Afsheen.
Thank you, Husna. Thank you for the wonderful presentation.
Thank you, Afshin. Gabby Ring, my dear friend, is a leadership and a team coach, a speaker, a facilitator, and author with over 25 years of experience and leadership experience. With a background in engineering, business, and coaching, she brings a grounded lens to decision making, resilience, my favorite, emotional intelligence, and leading through change. Welcome, Gabby.
Thank you so much for having me, Husna. I'm excited. This is going to be a great conversation. You kicked us off in a great start.
Thank you, Gabby. Thank you all. As we move through today's conversation, I will be holding four themes into that gives a shape to our dialogue. That is identity, trust, decision, and culture. When we talk about identity, what authority becomes before the answers have arrived. So when clarity is still forming, people look beyond the decisions. They look for steadiness, honesty, and whether the leader is grounded or only performing the confidence. So, Michelle, when a leader has authority but clarity is still forming, people often notice more than the decision itself. They notice steadiness, honesty, and presence. So, what has your journey taught about holding that space?
Yeah. So first of all, I think that we are seeing that more and more now, especially in the startup scene, right? So
Mhm.
things are changing so rapidly, and sometimes it's very hard to keep up with the way the technology evolves. Sometimes it's even the own product that your company is developing. Yeah. And market is booming. You have competitors everywhere. So the stress and the pressure is coming from any type of direction. But what I've learned that really works best in terms of how to show up is really the topic of awareness. So when you are aware of yourself, when you are aware of others, then it's much kind of like easier to validate with yourself what's important. How do I want to show up? How do I want to show up when I don't have all the answers and when actually so much is going on? And sometimes it's not easy for leaders to show up. So I think that the matter of awareness, awareness to yourself and to others, and what is it that you want people to take with them after the meeting with you, etc. That is the most important thing.
Hmm. Definitely, self awareness is a big key for the leader because that helps you keep you grounded and bring some kind of a clarity for yourself. Thank you, Michelle, for the thought. Afshin, as you listen to Michelle, what resonates with you about how leaders are read in those early or uncertain moments?
I think that one thing that, Michelle is also pointing out is the uncertainty is always present. It's not just in, newer times. Even when you as a leader are new in your role, that is brings a lot of uncertainty. When you are given new tasks or new projects or anything that's happening, it brings out a lot of uncertainty. So uncertainty is something that you cannot avoid at all. And it has this tendency, unfortunately, to throw us as leaders off balance, meaning that we tend to believe that we have a certain way that we perform, or we want to come across as we have a role that we play, and we really want to take on that role, take on that image. But when uncertainty shows up, I think that your authentic your personality traits that are you really shows up. And for any self-aware leader, as Michelle is pointing, that will be a key way to understanding where the improvement areas are, what needs to be improved, what needs to be changed, how can you apply what you're seeing in yourself or observing in yourself to become a better leader. But for people that are reading you, they usually see the true side of you. That's my personal experience also from seeing people in stressful situations, because uncertainty usually brings a lot of stress. And in stressful situations, you start seeing, if I'm going to use a psychological term of it, your shadow sides. You start seeing the sides you don't believe you have, and they show up like in anger or in any way that people may read you. And so I would even say that you are read more accurately, but it doesn't have to mean that you're being read as somebody you like to be in those situations.
That's a very beautiful reflection of what you just said because that throws you off balance. I simply love that word which you used. And that's exact situations wherein you're read the way you are as a leader. It could be off balance or it could be really maintaining your sagacity in those tough situations. Thank you, Afshin, for sharing that beautiful reflection. And Gabby, what would you add from your own experience about what a team needs to see from a leader before all the answers are available?
Well, the thing I think, I mean, they explained it very beautifully. The only thing I would add is the leader needs to be aware that uncertainty isn't just happening to them. It's happening across the board. So their people are also uncertain and things are going on in their heads as well. So how is it that you can recognize that to be able to alleviate some of that, bring a little bit of certainty in what you know in that chaos? And so, like, yes, the storm is raging on you, but if you also take into consideration that other people are in that same space feeling uncertain, have a little bit of empathy, have a little bit of how do you communicate, what is it that you want to say, make sure you bring them in and be aware that it's not just happening to you, it's happening to everyone, and you can weather this storm together, right? If you recognize that. So that's what I would add, Husna.
Yeah,
And I
that's
love
three.
one of the things I loved you said, Husna, is like when things are good, like it's easy to be a great leader. It's when things are uncertain, when there's all kinds of pressure. That's when it gets hard. That's when you get tested. Going back to what Afsheen was saying, like how is it that you're gonna be when it gets tested like that? And what kind of environment are you gonna be creating? So yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I simply love three different perspectives, three different leaders, what he shared, starting with self awareness from Michelle. And I simply love what Afshin said that being tested into the pressure and throwing off balance is something which comes in naturally because that's where anger, pain, sadness, imbalance of anything can be shown up. And as you said, what you are, everybody else is also experiencing the same thing. Let's move up with that same kind of thing. Either you can create a balance or an imbalance depending on how you absorb and take it forward. I simply love that thought. And that whole thing takes me to a second theme into reflection. What I'm taking from this identity piece is not the perfect answers. It is the ground a leader stands on while still the answers are yet forming. As I often say, people listen to the decision, but they follow the steadiness behind it. And that brings us to trust because uncertainty does not reveal the leader, it reveals what the true room is holding on to them. And that's where I feel the one agreeable team may really be telling us about trust what we have for each one of us. A quiet room can easily look like an alignment, but silence does not always mean we are all agreeing to everything what's happening. Sometimes it could be trust, and sometimes a clear said hesitation which is not being very clear or being said as well. Sometimes people are protecting themselves or holding something very important because we are not comfortable sharing whether it's safe to be in that zone. So, Afshin, I would like to start with you. A quiet or agreeable theme can sometimes look like trust, but it may be telling a different story altogether. From your experience, when you have seen silence or agreement means something deeper than alignment, what does it look like?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You know, it's very funny to put it that way, that being quiet and being agreeable is the way that you show alignment, but that's also the way where you're showing that I don't, you know, it's a distrust. If there is a distrust in on the team, usually that also comes to expression through the exact same attributes. And so when a person or when a team is quiet, they might be quiet not because they agree and they want to do what is being told. They are quiet because they don't want to contribute anymore, because there is some kind of distrust to the leader. They feel that they are not being heard. They are not being taken into account with their opinions or their perspectives. And when they feel that one too many times, that stops, and that's when they get quiet. And I like to put myself in these positions where I am a team member. When I'm voicing my opinions and my perspectives, it's much easier and more inviting when I'm asked to do that. Whereas when everything that is put forward is dismissed for whatever reason. So I think that the fact that somebody looks like agreeable on a team doesn't necessarily have to be that they are aligned. That can also mean that they have stopped caring, they have disengaged from the topic altogether. So in many ways, both of these things show up, you know, in the same way, but it is on the leader, on the team manager to go into the depths of understanding people and understanding what is exactly happening here. And that's where the, one-to-one human aspect comes into play, because outside it may look the same and you could, take it and fly with it, but it will not work if you're not aware of what that quiet or what that agreeableness actually means. So it's very much on the leader to understand, and again it comes down to a leader's ability to be authentic, to be aware of others, to be able to understand what role they are playing themselves in making people be this way. So it's a lot of, it takes you back to understanding people by understanding how you are being perceived by them.
Mhm. That's a really clear, distinctive definition of how a leader should present themselves. And I love the fact when you said a leader putting himself or herself in the shoes of the team members is so very important to understand whether the opinion should be taken or whether it should be shared, because that really where makes the team alignment happening, and that's going to stop a lot of resistance, and it'll really, that's the place wherein you build resilience amongst you as well as amongst the team members. That was a beautiful piece. Thank you, Afsheen. Gabby, as you hear Afsheen, what have you noticed about the difference between the real trust and the surface agreement?
Yeah, no, I love what she was sharing. I would also add, like, the team dynamics has a big place to play here. The trust between members and between the manager and the team. You will notice if you're just sitting back and sort of watching the dynamics of a team, you'll see people that just go along to get along, right? And what ends up happening is there's no buy-in, there's no commitment. The leader can be up there sharing, hey, this is the direction, this is what we're doing. But if there's no engagement, there's no trust, just like what Ashim was saying, there's no commitment, there's no buy-in. And so then you end up having these same conversations, the same meetings time after time. And it ends up being like Groundhog Day. Like, haven't we already made this decision? And then there's discontent. People start disengaging more and more. And I share all of this, and it doesn't sound like I've actually lived it, does it? Like, I'm sharing this because yeah, this is real life. This is what happens. And if you don't develop the trust within the team, within the participants, sometimes that's what ends up happening. You get stuck into this cycle of disengagement, a cycle of distrust, and people just disengage. And so being able to recognize that, not just as a leader, but I would challenge people as a participant, as a team player, to be able to say, how do we engage people? How do we build the trust? Let's be more authentic and really move the ball forward. So.
Hmm. That's a good one to look at, Gabby. Thank you for sharing that thought. Michelle, I'd like to bring in, what would you add about how leaders can sense when the room is quiet because people trust them, and when it is quiet because something is being held back?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, right? For me, it's quite simple. Maybe not that easy, but simple. It's a lot about trusting your gut. I think that we all understand feelings and emotions, right? And when something is off or something is not working well, you sense that. You sense it in your body. You sense it in the energy in the room. You sense it in the facial expressions that people have, right? We've all been there in these meetings where you ask, do we understand the same thing? Or how do we feel about it? Or, and then you expect to get the excitement, but instead of that, you're getting maybe some coldness, or maybe just like, yeah, okay, let's try, or a disbelief or a distrust. So I think that actually there's a lot of information from stakeholders that is being shared or communicated through silence. So there's a lot of what being said actually with what haven't been said. And I think that it's up to us leaders to also feel the room, feel the warmth or the coldness, the emotions, the facial expressions, and again, trusting our gut, trusting our intuitions, because eventually, leaders or not, we are all humans. So we speak and communicate in different levels and different languages, and it's not just being said. Yeah. So I come from like this technical background. So we talk a lot about products and features and I don't know, launches and still it's very emotional. Even so we're talking about a lot of technical things. So I think that for me, a good sense of leadership, it's also being able to have this more human layer, this emotional layer.
Michelle, I have a quick question. Can I jump in with a question? So when you mentioned that like quiet also sends a message, like the
Yeah.
thought that comes up to me is like, you know how they say silence is agreement? Like like how do you move past that? Because everybody says, okay, if nobody says anything, then that means everybody agrees and goes back. And then it goes back to my thought on like you're not getting buy-in because you're not actually getting a yes from people. What are your
Hmm.
thoughts?
No, so first of all, I think that here exactly comes also the experience, right? So it's not just about what's being said, it's what's happened afterward. So let's say now we all had a meeting, we reached quote unquote reached, yeah, like an agreement, but then nothing, no one follows up. Here's your answer. You haven't had the buy-in, right? And now you need to figure out why. Maybe in different one-on-ones, maybe you need to grab someone for a coffee. There's a lot of conversation and communication that actually is being made not inside the meeting rooms. We all know that. So you need to understand what is the source of influence, who can also help you get more buy-in. Yeah, maybe you need to show your ideas or speak with someone in a very informal way. You need to understand how people tick in a way.
Mm,
So I think that that is kind of like my 2 cents on your questions. Did I answer it?
yeah, no, that is awesome. Yeah, no, that's real life. That's what happens. So yeah.
This is such an important distinction, I feel. Silence is not always a proof of trust. Real trust is when people can bring the truth into the room before any consequences become bigger. In uncertain moments, those honest signals do matter. They really help leaders see what is really happening, not just what appears calm onto the surface. And that's where it connects directly to decision making because a decision made without the truth in the room can look strong but still fragile underneath. So I would say decision when the defensible path and the right path do not really fully meet. In those uncertainty, decisions are rarely clean. They are the moments when the data supports one direction and the pressure pushes you to another. And the human impact then asks the leader to pause. That's where the leadership judgment becomes very real. So, Gabby, these are the moments when the defensible path and the right path do not fully meet. From your experience, how do you hold a decision when data, pressure, and human impact are all present together?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I love, Husna, the way you stated it, data, pressure, and human impact, because the one that really bubbles to the surface is the pressure. Like the data and the human impact, people, if you actually like step back, you know what the data is telling you, you know the story, you can hear the people. It's that pressure. When you allow that pressure to overwhelm you, people tend to make decisions they probably shouldn't be making, right? They end
Yeah.
up either being reflective or I mean reactive, or do things that really impact. But if you slow down long enough to really pay attention to what the data is telling you and what the human interactions are telling you, and regulate your pressure, goes back to emotional intelligence. Regulate the pressure around you. You know what to do. And I'm going to give you an example here because this is very common, right? You got demand, and the marketplace is just putting a lot of pressure on you. And it could be whether there's no demand or there's high demand. And
Mhm.
we've all been in those kinds of situations where the pressure comes on. You've got data telling you what you should be doing. You know the impact it's going to have, and sometimes that pressure overwhelms you, and you end up making decisions based on the pressure and not the data or the human impact. So I had started with this one company, and the demand there was really high. It was really, really high, and people were under a lot of pressure, and all they could see was black and white.
Mhm.
Either we're going to fail and not meet their demand, or we're just going to walk away from customers. Like those were the two options. And I'm like, all right, I was fairly new to this company, and I'm like, okay, let's talk about our different options. It can't just be black and white like that. What is going on? What's causing the demand to spike the way it is? How long is it going to? You start just asking questions about what is happening instead of making decisions. If you quickly go to face the pressure and then start making decisions, you're not thinking it through. So once we started, this is the craziness, and you guys might be able to relate to this because um, once we started asking the question, what we realized was the reason we were getting the spike was because people were squirreling things away. And they were afraid that they weren't going to have enough product to be able to sustain a big surge. So do we all remember something like that? Like, do you guys remember in 2020 when everybody was like, we were out of toilet paper? Like, what is up with toilet paper? Like, what is that all about? So that was sort of what was happening with this company. There was this big lift in demand because people were afraid and they were just taking on so much of the product and squirreling it away that we felt the surge. Once we realized that, it was like, okay, let's bring it back down. Let's figure out like what is actually needed so that everybody could have a little bit until we can move into a space where there's more product to meet the demand. And we were able to weather the storm. You never walk away from customers. You know how hard it is to actually get customers to turn around and make a decision to walk away? You'll never get that customer back. So being able to really look at the data, collect the information, understand the impact. What is the impact of us walking away going to be? And what's other alternatives? Brainstorm, get creative. I know we've talked about this before, but I think people under pressure get locked in and see just black and white and make decisions based on that instead of really broadening and getting creative, regulating their pressure to be able to see other alternatives.
Pause and reflect is what I understand from from what we just shared. Because unless we pause and that speed of it, there is a lot of possibility we might end up doing a lot of things which is not needed for us, neither for the customers, neither for the product what you're trying to get into. Thank you, Gabby. That was really beautiful. So, Michelle, as you listen to Gabby, what stands out to you about the inner work of decision making when certainty gets limited?
Yeah. So I think that just building on top of what Gabby already said, it's for me a lot about the self-regulation. A leader who does not know how to self-regulate is going to have a lot of struggles, especially these days, again, when everything is moving so fast. So I think that nowadays, let's see, is what we've kind of like facing, right? So as we said, we have the human impact. You have sometimes very limited time to make a decision, and sometimes you don't have enough data. So how should we then take the decision when these are kind of like the parameters that we are facing? So I think that what could maybe work best is to ask kind of like three main questions, like maybe the leaders can also take it with them, but what type of information do I need or is available for me in order to make the decision? Who else is involved in making this decision? Maybe I can also ask another stakeholder, another peer, another colleague. And then what do I need in order to move things forward or make the right thing for the organization that I work for? And I think that, again, when you kind of like, as you said, Husna, pause, reflect, and then ask yourself very intentionally the questions, it may bring a lot of clarity in this uncertainty. And again, I think that here now what we as leaders need to face or kind of like even win is the pressure element. I think that that is the main theme that we are all facing. And it's not just about, like working in a technological company or not. It's in general. Ever since 2020, something in the life pace is just, shift, we geared and we just never slow down. And the pace is just going faster and faster. So I think that these are kind of like the upskilling that leaders need to upskill themselves. It's not just about getting more and more tech savvy with AI, for example. It's also about relearning the human skills.
Yeah, that's simply I love that because as a human resource professional, before being a leadership coach, combining together the tools we amplify and add value to ourselves is very important to pace up into the world because we need to self-regulate before we act as a leader because we need to be human first. All of the things will fall in place. It was a beautiful piece of reflection, Michelle. Thank you. Afshin, what would you add about how leaders can make decisions without pretending they have more certainty than they actually do?
I think, it's one thing that I've seen time and time again, both from people in organizations as well as from leaders having a desire to be more transparent. And that is what needs to be implemented in ways that actually works for an organization and for the leadership or for the management team. without that kind of transparency where you can share what is being taken into account when making decisions or deciding on things, I think that people feel held outside. They feel they are not included. And as both Gabby and Michelle are pointing out, there are things that are considered, both the human aspect, the data, the pressure, everything is being considered. And more and more now than ever before, I think that people are asked to take in the emotional aspect much more than it was before. Before, when a lot of data was available, usually the decisions were made based on them, but now it's also demanded for the leaders to take into account the human aspect of it. And that is not always clear when decisions are made. That is not coming through in ways that people understand. So being transparent about how the decisions are made, I think that is some, how I would say that would make a difference in making the decisions in uncertain times.
Thank you, Afsheen. With this, I will take back to my story where I like to share some of the bit which I really understood what happened during the uncertain times. At that time when I didn't had certainty, my husband, as I said, just began his cancer treatment. At the same time, my business was facing a serious client crisis after the training center caught fire. What I remember most from that episode of leadership is it did not give me any luxury of choosing one responsibility over the other. I had to take care of my family, trust my team, communicate with the client as transparent as I could be, and still protect the commitment I had made. Along with the three technical members of my team, I stepped in for a crash course with the recruits. We learned with them, got trained, prepared with them, and moved through the certification process together, getting the certification as well. By the 21st day, the recruits were placed on the project. It was not a perfect moment for me, but the project definitely got delayed. But what changed was in the conversation was the ownership I took, the transparency I shared, the commitment I took over, and the fact that we did not abandon the responsibility I had on my shoulders. That experience taught me this, that executive presence is the credibility you build even before the crisis and the responsibility you carry during the crisis. Sometimes holding authority means saying, I do not have the perfect path, but I will not compromise on the commitment what I carry for me as well as for my team. And perhaps that is why uncertainty matters. That's where a leader holds it, does not stay with the leader alone. It quietly shapes what an entire organization believes it allowed to do. So that's where we come to the last theme of our conversation today, the culture. What organizations build when certainty becomes the standard. If leader feels the way they always have to be sounding certain, honest conversations can quietly leave the room. People begin to perform with confidence, have lots of hideouts, the doubts, and the rush towards the answers before even the truth has had enough space. So, Afshin, when leaders feel they always have to sound certain, honest, conversation can quietly leave the room. From your experience, what begins to happen inside the organizations?
I think that when a leader has a very strong need to be certain all the time or sound certain, I think they kind of set a standard that impacts the whole room, where everybody wants to sound certain. So it impacts the communication within a team. And when it happens, usually when you are more interested in certainty over curiosity or over transparency or anything else, I think it really erodes the culture. It takes away from, bringing in some innovation because you don't want to sound uncertain. And that's, we see usually uncertainty as something that is negative, but it has actually a lots of positive sides when you can pose a question without being judged that you are sounding uncertain, or you can bring in ideas that are still emerging, that are not implemented, that are not planned out fully, that are not ready, and you are able to speak about the unfinished projects. I think that's where it really matters that you can use uncertainty to your advantage instead of always going towards asking for certainty. And so that when a leader is very concerned about sounding certain, he or she usually sets that as a unwritten norm, unwritten unspoken rule for how everybody should behave, and that takes away from the openness, from the team dynamic that can make things work. Because when you share something that you're not certain about, it takes a lot of courage. And it should be the other way around. It should be invited. It should be openness to, inviting to sharing ideas that are unfinished. So I think that it really also impacts in the end the trust on the team, because you, as an employee, you start seeing that confidence really is rewarded or appreciated over anything like curiosity, bringing in new ideas, being creative, or being innovative. So I think that it really deteriorates the trust, and that also impacts the culture, and it takes away from the psychological safety. People don't dare doing anything that the leader is not, showing that they can do. So that's how I see it impacting, always wanting to, going for the certainty, although certainty has its place and it needs to be there, because with some projects you must have some level of certainty, but you cannot compromise everything with focusing solely on that.
Mm-hmm. Uncertainty definitely is a place of innovation. I agree when you say that, because that's where you tend to really broaden your horizon, or expanding the piece of what you are as a leader, and also involving the team to show their part of involvement without micromanaging it. Looking forward to do a macro development can really be fruitful. Thank you, Afsheen, for sharing that beautiful reflection. I would like to go to Michelle. What would you add about the cultural message leaders send when they can say, I do not know yet, but I'm paying attention?
Yeah. First of all, I just want to share that, Afshin, I think that you've described it in a beautiful way. So thank you very much for your reflection. Husna, to your point about this question, I think that when when leaders are trying to convince us that they have certainty when they don't have that, it's a bit about like seeing a person trying to struggle with life. And I think that we sense that. So I think that actually kind of like admitting that I don't know, and I'm fine with that. It's not only human, it's also a lot about acceptance. And it brings a lot of calmness to yourself and to your team. Because if you are able to create this safe space or this safe culture, let's rephrase it in that way, when you, as a leader, can say, I don't know, and that is okay. So think about how a strong signal and confidence that is sent to the team. I don't know, but we will figure it out together. Or I don't know, and that it's okay not to know because look at what we're facing, right? So I think that it's much more than just even being human, which I really, really appreciate and I love, and I would definitely advocate for human and trust leadership, as you know. I think that the second layer is also that it's sending a signal of calmness. And when there's so much going on, you need this calmness, right? So, yeah, I love also how you phrase it. I don't know yet, but I'm paying attention.
So, Gabby, from a decision making lens, what becomes possible when an organization makes room for thoughtful uncertainty instead of rushing towards performance certainty?
Yeah, I think it's taking risks. The organization makes themselves able to take risks when you're comfortable with uncertainty, and you end up playing to win versus playing not to lose. And I'm just gonna for here in the U.S. there's the NBA playoffs. And so last night was this unbelievable game between the Knicks and the Spurs. Okay, it's basketball. And the Spurs were up by so much that you were thinking, okay, the Spurs got this. They're gonna win. And the Knicks came back with this unbelievable comeback. And when I started reflecting, and they ended up winning. When I started reflecting, I was like, that's what we're talking about here. The Spurs were up so high, they were playing not to lose. Whereas the Knicks had nothing to lose and they went after it and they won. And so I think taking this back to leadership, when you are open to be able to take risks and you're playing to win instead of playing not to lose, it's a little bit different. You play a little bit different, you show up differently, you take the risks that you need to, instead of protecting and trying to keep everything in control, because uncertainty is out there. It's going to happen, and if you're not open to playing to win, you're gonna end up trying to be defensive, and you're going to be trying to be protective, and that is what I think.
Wow, what a beautiful example, Gabby. I was watching the game last night with my son, and I didn't know they won. Thank you for sharing that with me today. And that what a beautiful reflection. Of course, when there is a fear of losing, then you tend to think that way itself. But when you're ready to take the chances, ready to take a challenge, and that's the place which brings a lot many things into the game. That fear starts subsiding, innovation starts creeping, and that's where the people, the leaders, the team, the opinions change, the way we look at things change, because that helps you reflect and bring innovation together. What a beautiful piece of reflection, Gabby. Thank you so much for sharing that. And in that, this is where culture becomes very real. If uncertainty, I'm sorry, if uncertainty is the only language leaders are allowed to speak, then truth starts leaving the room. People start hiding risks, as we spoke about just now. Questions, disagreements, and doubt prevail. Thoughtful uncertainty is not about weakness, it's about maturity. It allows leaders to pause, listen, think, and decide with more integrity. The strongest leaders are not always the ones who sound certain or think the fastest. Often they are the ones who can hold complexity long enough for the truth and judgment to meet. And perhaps that's what stays with people long after the moment has passed. Not speed for the answers, but the steadiness with which it was being held. So, with that, before I close in our conversation today, I would love one sentence from each one of you. What is one practice leaders should strengthen when they are asked to hold authority without certainty? So, Gabby, let me begin that with you.
I appreciate that question, Husna. I think the biggest thing is understanding your own relationship with uncertainty. And we talked a lot about this with emotional regulation, with awareness, but understanding your own relationship with it, uncertainty, and becoming aware of how it impacts others. And when things get really heavy, looking for support, being able to be vulnerable and saying, hey, I need help here, instead of abdicating or dictating, actually trying to collect the information, the human inside with the data, and not letting the pressure overcome. That was more than one sentence, so I apologize. So I guess my one sentence is understand your own relationship with uncertainty to be able to overcome the pressures.
Thank you, Gabby. Thank you. Michelle, what would
Yeah.
you add?
Yeah, so I would say awareness to the emotional side of other people. I feel as if a lot of time people are not aware that what we do and the way that we operate, even if we're coming with very good intentions, is impacting other people. So I would say awareness to other people's emotions.
Mm, thank you. Thank you, Michelle. Afsheen, what would you like to leave leaders with?
First, I would say I really, really love everything you've shared, Gabby and Michelle, and also you, Husna, about um, what can be practiced to being, I would say for me, I think it's being or seeing yourself as a leader who is a part of the team and not just leading the team. So you become as somebody who is also taking the perspective of the people that you're working with and listening, learning, and finding the way forward together with the people. So, not a short sentence, but I really would see people or leaders considering themselves as part of a team rather than just seeing themselves as the leaders of the team. I think that is where uncertainty can be handled differently and also be seen as the human that is behind that leadership role.
Hmm? So, what today I have heard from all three of you becomes more very prominent. Give respect and add value to your human self first. Everything will fall in place if you let go of the fear. Lift that uncertainty moments with experience, maturity, and innovation. I simply love that piece when you really I love getting creative in that moments when I'm challenged. And that's where it comes down to. Regulate yourself to see the best side of you because that's where you're challenged. So thank you, Michelle, Afsheen, and Gabby for bringing such depth and honesty to our conversation today. For leaders listening, I hope this leaves you with very good reflections. I would ask, when uncertainty enters your leadership, what do people experience from you? Do they experience steadiness or panic, honesty or performance, blame or ownership? Because holding authority without certainty is not about pretending that you know everything. It's about staying present when clarity is still forming, making decisions without false certainty, and building enough trust that truth does not have to hide in the room. And maybe that is the real work of leadership, not to stop the ground from moving, but to become steady enough that others can find their footing too. Thank you, leaders. Thank you all who are watching us on Leadership Exchange. Thank you for joining. Take care. Until then, see you back again. Bye now.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye bye.